I've been to some pretty dark places, and I think there is a thing called vicarious trauma that I didn't know about then, that I know about now, that I think is important when you're in a place where you're trying to help people who are walking through some really deep, deep darkness, that you attend to yourself, that's part of the care.
Yeah.
Is to live a healthy whole life.
Hey, sober people and sober adjacent people. Welcome to I Have 12 Questions. I'm Amanda Patton, your host, a leading expert on nothing. However, I am in recovery and I love it so much so that I launched this podcast where we get to talk to people who are trudging the road to happy freaking destiny across all the different ways that people get there. So while this is definitely through the lens of recovery and sobriety, these stories and the themes that we'll be covering are universally human. So love, loss, grief, excitement, parenting, outside issues, purpose, God stuff, whatever. In the words of the great Ted Lasso by way of Walt Whitman, I want to be curious, not judgmental. So like I said, we'll be talking to people in recovery. We're going to be talking to experts and practitioners who help those people along their path in recovery. And we're just really excited to hear people tell their stories and to be inspired by them and to create a community of support for everybody in recovery and people who know and love people who struggle with addiction issues and whatnot. So anyways, we're so glad you're here and thanks for listening. Hey listeners, just a quick disclaimer before we get into the interview. These episodes may contain adult language and subject matter that's not appropriate for all audiences. Also, we are not doctors or psychiatrists, so what we share on these episodes is certainly not to be considered medical or psychological advice, just our own personal experiences, which we hope will be helpful to others on a similar quest. So that's it, and thanks for listening. All right. Hey, sober family and our entire listener community. I am so excited for this conversation today. It's crazy to me because, sometimes you just ask the universe or God for something and it says yes without even challenging you or anything. And that's kind of what happened. So I've been pushing myself a lot lately to open my mind and my heart to what my spiritual life looks like beyond recovery. And I started watching this series called The Chosen. It's a modern depiction of the life of Jesus. And there was this documentary about the actor's experience called Jonathan and Jesus. And it features Jonathan Rumi, who's the actor who plays Jesus. And he's talking to all these different people about their experiences and their viewpoints on Jesus and who Jesus was and, whatnot. And one of those people is a woman named Danielle Strickland. And every time she spoke, I thought if someone would just talk more like this to the masses about faith, it would be a really great PR move for Christianity, which it kind of needs sometimes, So you can sense my contrarian, cynicism there. Anyone who knows me knows that I really struggle with organized religion, monotheism, some of the politics aligned there and marginalized groups and whatnot. But I've never doubted Jesus, the man, the character of the man, and that he loved and forgave and helped. And he did all of it in such humility. And to me, it's similar to Gandhi, Buddha, Mother Teresa, and so many others. And so being raised Southern Baptist doctrine and later Catholicism, I had little use for either. But I always kept a warm and fuzzy place in my heart for Jesus, for the teachings of Jesus. And so to me, Danielle encompasses that. She embodies that. She lives that in her everyday life. She is a Christian founder of global movements for spiritual leadership, justice advocacy, empowering communicators, and peacemaking. She's an author. She's a disruptor. She's a feminist, a mom, a wife, a podcaster. I mean, she pretty much does everything there is to do to make the world a better place. So first of all, thank you for joining, Danielle. Welcome to the show.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm always up to hang with the curious, open peeps.
Well, that's what I'm trying to be. So you, DanielleStrickland.com, all of your work is out there and you've got a podcast. We'll talk a little bit about your books and everything. But some of the, wording around what your website says is that you let love lead you to inspire, challenge, provoke, and disrupt the present and to live in the future now. And you've lived in different cultures and contexts around the world. And so you celebrate diversity. and you long for wrong things to be made right. And you practice following Jesus on a daily basis. And you have co-founded multiple charities and nonprofits and a whole host of failures that we don't often ask about, is what your website says. I love it when people say, yeah, it wasn't all success, by the way. All of this has convinced her of the deep need we all have for hope, faith, and love. And you've written 6 books. My goodness. The latest is The Other Side of Hope. You have a podcast called The Right Side Up, which I've been listening to, and it's just awesome. The woman that you've been talking to recently celebrated 500,000 downloads, and you speak to people all over the world. You lead Boundless Communications, Inc., which launches creative exploits like Women Speakers Collective, liberating voices of women around the globe. IMBY, a tiny home movement in my backyard. Brave Global, Infinitum, Hagar's Voice. Wow, you've got a lot going on. She lives in Vancouver, Canada, and with her 3 sons and husband, Steve. You like getting outside, doing physical things, and you can't turn down a free lunch. So I want to start with an icebreaker. If your life had a theme song, what would it be and why?
I think it would be that song, Life is a Highway. I want to ride it all night long. Just basically, I feel like that. Yeah, I feel like that actually, just as you read all the things and you were like, that's a lot of things. I'm like, yeah, that's the speed I go. And let's go. That's always why not? Let's do it. Let's ride. So depending on which direction you're going in, that can be really good news and it can be really not so good news.
Yeah.
But that the ethos of life is a highway, that there's places to go, but also like we could have fun doing it too. This isn't a drudgery. This isn't a duty bound drudgery I'm called to. This is like a ride, adventure.
Right. That's such a great perspective because so much of the work that you do, I could have kept reading. I mean, I could have, there's so much, but a lot of the work you do just from looking at what you've done and listening to some of these podcasts and some of the problems in the world that you're solving for, it's really heavy stuff. It's really heavy, heart heavy things that oppression and women have encountered and people in general and whatnot. And so I would assume that you've got to keep that type of mentality so that you don't get bogged down by it. Otherwise it could turn into a drudgery or feel like an obligation, So how do you kind of, I guess, keep from drifting off to that place?
Yeah, it took me a while. I think this is pretty common with people in helping professions, but it took me a while to connect the dots between my own personal pain and background and experience and even, addiction journey to the help I was giving the people I was helping. So It took a while for those dots to kind of connect. There's a great book called Breathing Underwater by Richard Rohr.
Richard Rohr, that's one I have read. So
okay.
good.
And his, what he says is particularly, when you talk about the pain of your own religious upbringing in a Christian fundamentalist kind of environment, he says, Christian leaders specifically are the hardest to help, because their dysfunction or their disease or their detachment to doing good is the problem, but it's applauded, so that idea of this like internal addiction to like appeasing or pleasing or helping or serving or whatever that locks you into the very same destructive patterns that like heroin does or cocaine does or whatever is present, but we're unattentive to it because everyone's busy going, wow, you're amazing.
Right. You're getting so many.
So when you're a heroin addict, everyone's like, dude, you got to stop, but when you're a religious, duty obligated, overcommitted helper, everyone's like, wow, you're amazing. So even that piece of self-awareness is part of the key. So, and I would say, I've been to some pretty dark places. And I think there is a thing called vicarious trauma that I didn't know about then, that I know about now, that I think is important when you're in a place where you're trying to help people who are walking through some really deep, deep darkness, that you attend to yourself, that's part of the care.
Yeah.
Is to live a healthy whole life. Mm-hmm.
Thank you for that. Why? This is not a great segue at all, but why are you referred to as the ambassador of fun?
Well, so it started way, way back. I lived in this like kind of urban drug addicted community actually called the downtown east side of Vancouver. And we moved in there with some friends and we decided we all had kind of little kids. So we decided instead of all of us trying to find daycare, we would just create our own collective. And
Yeah.
every parent would just take one day a week. So my days were Friday, but really we determined I'm not very functionally good at teaching children things. So we just made my day fun day. So my day was just like, let's go do fun stuff. And so this little girl, Kiara, she kept calling me teacher Danielle. And I was like, honey, I'm not a teacher. Like I'm literally like a school dropout. I'm not a teacher. So I'm like, so she's like, what should I call you? And I was like, why don't you call me the ambassador of fun? And then she goes, okay. So the next day she rings my doorbell and I'm like, hello. And she goes, is the bastard of fun there? so, so technically I'm the bastard of fun, but I can't really put that on my bio.
That is the cutest story.
Yeah. Come on in, honey. I'm right here.
I'm right here. Call me whatever you want.
I am an Enneagram 7. So fun is important to me and always been important to me. And that also meant, it wasn't until like I turned 40 that I realized I had feelings. So a lot of like my work, even in my own recovery and my own journey is like oh, wow, what are these things I can't control anymore? And where are they coming from? Is my own journey into like, oh, there's things to pay attention to that are underneath the surface and not all that fun, so that's been a fair bit of work in the last decade.
That's a really interesting insight.
Mm-hmm.
And the Enneagram and how sometimes we find out like, oh, this is who I actually am, when you go through those journeys and do that work. And because people ask me all the time, like, why are you so serious? Like, I have no idea because I really do like fun. I want to have fun. But even when I'm trying to have fun, like scheduled fun, I'm thinking about what bad could happen and are we on schedule and what do I need to be doing after this? It's almost like I don't know where that comes from, but it's not core. And it's weird, these walls and patterns and facades that we start throwing up throughout different experiences in life, and then it's hard to find your way back, and it takes a lot of, but then when you do rediscover it, when you start to see that about yourself, you're like, oh, okay, there it is, but you really have to work at it. And I'm sure that in your work, working with other people, don't you find that that's when you're having those aha moments about your own stuff? Because when I'm sponsoring women or doing certain things, I'm sitting there trying to teach someone something or share something with someone. And, then I'm like, oh,
I think it can be both. I think it can be both. So this is interesting because I think what you said is when you're helping somebody do what you've already done. So that's an interesting thing. So what you're doing is you're not only re-emphasizing what you've done, but you're deepening it. Right. So that's a beautiful exercise. But I also think there's a thing you can do where you help people instead of and not having done the work. So if you're helping people and you have not done your own work around like what's happening inside of me, have I righted the wrongs that are going on? Have I used compassion as a tool of inquiry instead of judgment and self-loathing? So there's a lot of people I know who are sort of trapped in doing good work, and it's actually not helping them because they haven't done their work. So there is, and I think that's one of the beautiful things of the recovery, the 12-step program, is the helping the people doesn't come till the end as a part of re-emphasizing and almost reliving your own journey of recovery versus, I think, the religious impulse, which is to say, I better fix you. And that somehow fixing you is part of my, service to God instead of actually connecting it to the deep internal work of my own heart. Right. So sometimes people in helping professions, and I think I didn't do this consciously, and I think I did deeply identify with people who were broken and oppressed and abused because that's my journey. I just hadn't voiced it yet. But I think sometimes it ends up being its own kind of power or people end up serving out of trying to prove something or trying to please someone. And when you serve out of proving or pleasing, you're never in alignment with your core self, because you're not actually serving out of overflow or love. You're trying to prove something or you're trying to please people. So I think that can be a bit of a trap. So I think people should help other people 100%, but also I think, they should attend to themselves so that their helping is actually serving everyone, including them.
Right. That's huge. That is huge. And you're so right. And I see it all the time. I've done it myself. I've been in relationships where someone was helping me. And that was a lot of the religiosity of my childhood. I think that's part of it. It's like you're broken, you need to be fixed. And also I don't like this implication of I'm better than you, or I'm higher than you, or I'm somehow more holy than, you know what I mean? Because in recovery, it's like, look, we're both just trying to stay sober one day at a time. It doesn't matter if you've been sober for 40 years or 2 days. Like, I am just as close. I'm one decision away from, messing up my life with XYZ. But also in addiction specifically, the reason I think that people are more open to listening to others is because they themselves have been through it. So it's harder you're not judging. Whereas with churchy stuff, if I did something wrong or I was in trouble and I had some dude talking to me about, whatever XYZ, and it's like, we don't share experiences. We are not living the same experience. And so I felt very, resistant, and I don't, does that make sense? Like, you want to 100%. Deal with people.
So there's a monk that described sort of the whole Christian life as one beggar telling another beggar where to get bread. And I think that's what the 12 steps understood, right? Here's one alcoholic telling another alcoholic where they can get sober. Here's one beggar telling another beggar where I found bread. And and this is the great irony, when you say, I always had this tender, beautiful thing for Jesus, and always had this, like, this doesn't match what my experience is of this religion. And I would say it never did. Jesus never came to start a religion. He came to disrupt all religion. So, which is a great threat to religion, because religion aligns itself with systems and power and control and hierarchy and the do's and don'ts, and someone's drawing lines of who's in and who's out. And I always thought it was a great irony that so many, recovery groups meet in the basement of churches, and I would go, even as someone who comes out of a Christian leadership thing, so I'd be a pastor, I'd go to the recovery group and be like, oh, here's where the church happens. Because in essence, to really be a follower of Jesus is to be honest, is to be open, is to be non-hierarchical, right? Is to be like, tell the truth, and together we heal. There's this beautiful couple passages of scripture where, there's one, if you confess sort of that you've messed up or whatever, that you're forgiven. That's kind of, so you don't have to hide it, which I always just want to go around telling religious people, it's all good. You're good. It's okay. You can let it out. It's okay. But then also there's another one that says, if you confess your sin, which is a weird word, but like your brokenness, one to another, you're healed. And I think that journey between forgiveness, really receiving this sense of like relief and burden lifting, and then healing, I feel like you can have a personal experience of the burden lifting. I think that's much of what that, that AA, that miracle, that there is a place of relief. That's what that is. It's this like divine sort of relief that you're off the hook and that you can begin again. Jesus would use the words like born again, which has been also twisted into some conformity with a religious thing, but it really means made new. Right. Which is that great relief. I can be made new. I could try again. Tomorrow's a brand new day, but then it also is, it's more than that, because that's something that happens to me, but actually my healing comes in community. So that's the other recipe that I think is so cool is there a place, and that's, I work with a lot of Christian leaders, and I ask them, like, who are you confessing to? Who are you healed with as you relieve the burden of self? Like, where is that happening for you? Because in religious constructs, there are no places for that. Religious constructs would say, don't tell anybody. right? Or it'll threaten your position or whatever, or they'll go have
Yeah.
these like boundaries. But that's what I love about that idea. And I think that's what's so powerful about a recovery community is one, there's this like, you should just let this stuff out. This stuff's going to kill you. And
Yep.
somebody needs to help us know how to do that. We literally just don't know how. And then that's what's good about having a system to help us. But then that idea that we're doing this together, that as somebody, confesses kind of their human predicament, I find myself there and have permission then to confess mine. And then I'm not met with judgment. I'm met with acceptance. All these things are healing elements to our lives.
Right.
So there's something beautiful. I think the recovery journey, I really feel like everybody is in recovery in some way. We're all recovering from our own human condition, and addictions just look 1,000 different shades, but yeah, I long for everybody to have a place, like a really good recovery room that they can be healed,
Yeah. I love that. And just through watching The Chosen, it's done in such a way that you just feel that. You feel the emotion, you feel the joy, you feel like it just is in it. And I am very resistant, right? I am not the typical audience or demographic to something like that. My mom asked me to watch it for a long time. And I was like, why? I know the Bible backward and forward. And she's like, no, it's, and I did. And I have had so much emotion, but it's because of what you just said. All it ever was about was connection and love and forgiveness and getting all that stuff out of the way, right? All the things that separate us and getting to the heart of the matter. And, his kindness toward people who were so unkind toward him and using people's brokenness. He had this ragtag team of, disciples that he pulls in so, and I love that. I love the fact that he was always, and that's what I could never reconcile that of like, Jesus was in the streets doing the work with the unclean. And, that's what the Bible said. And then in church, it was like, no, we only hang out with like clean, shiny, wealthy people who all look exactly the same and think the same and X, Y, Z. And not that big, expensive churches, whatever. I have my own opinions about hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on facilities when you could be feeding people. I don't know. You could be helping heal people. And so for me, but some churches really do. They're in the streets doing the work. They're rolling up their sleeves. They're helping. They're part of the community. They're really out there doing the work that Jesus, tried to teach us to want to do. And so, yeah, that's why that show is so powerful, I think, because it just shows you like right into the heart, right into the heart of who he was. And whether you're religious or not, it just even if he was just a person, right, still that example is useful I think for everybody. So I know, and part of the reason I have this podcast is because I don't want to just talk about 12-step. I want to talk about all the ways people get sober, stay sober. So I know you don't really follow traditional, recovery nowadays, but what was it like for you, I guess, when you were in that place? And when did you know this can't be my life anymore?
Yeah, so I kind of had a secret problem in my own with alcohol. And way back in my history, I had a drug problem and then kind of got healed, I would say. Like I had a very powerful personal encounter with Jesus in a jail cell. That's kind of actually how my faith started, my faith journey started. Yeah. And it really was miraculous. But I would say that I was misguided by thinking that was it then. Once I had that, I was good. I was healed. And I never really did any work on why I was a drug addict or like what those, and really all addiction is pain management, really. That's pretty clear. So all addiction's pain management. So I never really dealt with the pain. I just moved on. And so then years and years later, it crept back in, and it manifested itself through a secret relationship that I had with alcohol that was moving out of control. And I actually was and I was helping women coming out of exploitation and helping in recovery communities. So nobody would know this. But
Right.
I think I wrote extensively about it in a book I wrote called The Ultimate Exodus, which kind of chronicles the journey of freedom from oppression with my own recovery journey. But that secret, the dissonance of who you people think you are and who you're projecting and who you really are, when that becomes uncomfortable enough, which I think by the grace of God became uncomfortable enough for me before I was exposed by my own behavior. Do you know what I mean? Like there was a grace-filled moment where I knew that I needed to get some help. And I had a friend who was a recovery 12-stepper, actually. And I went to her, and actually, I think she kind of asked a few pointed questions, like people who know how to tell the truth asked, that I couldn't really dodge. And then I just took a great risk and told her the truth. And that was the day where she's like, oh, like, I can help. I can help. And I remember, it was so funny. So like I already have this whole Christian leader thing going on. So you have like times 10, I feel like, of shame and self-loathing and like, this is ridiculous. Like I should know, like, and I help all these people. So like, again, it's just, and then I also had a problem with anonymity, where I was really pretty well known. So then that was also tricky because I didn't really know what to do about that. And so there were like sort of a lot of like traps in a way. And I remember finding my way in those moments, just like, what am I going to do? And I think just when you have that aha that you're not okay and you need some help, and when you can actually name that and say it out loud and begin to seek help, there's a real brokenness there that's beautiful. It's like a beautiful breaking, like all of those stealing of your walls of self, I can do this, and like, it's gone. And so there's you're in a very vulnerable place. And I went to this like basement across town, and just like I went late and I left early because I didn't want anybody to see me, and I sat in the back and I didn't want to talk. I'm literally a professional communicator, and I couldn't speak for like 6 months in meetings. I could only weep. And it's a reckoning, isn't it, with your own self? It's a reckoning with the end of you, which is quite beautiful because the end of you is the beginning of something else. And I'd say something divine. The end of you is the beginning actually of faith in God. Jesus would have said this like this in his teachings. He said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And, we all try to highly spiritualize that. But actually what he's saying is that's the way in.
Right.
That if you want to live a blessed, sacred life, there's only one way there. And it's through a poverty of spirit. It's when you get to the end of yourself.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting in this basement, just weeping in the back, and then just leaving early so no one would see me. And this guy comes running out after me. It was so funny. And he's like, I'm not going to bug you or anything. Don't worry. Like, I just felt like I saw you across the room and I just needed to tell you something. And I was like, sure. And he goes, I just really feel like, I think you're supposed to try prayer. And I was like, this is so hysterical. Like, I'm a professional Christian leader. Like I literally, and I'm at this like anonymous back room sort of place, and in this recovery center that tries not to do that Christian thing. And this guy comes out and he says, I think you should try prayer. And I remember thinking, I think he's right. Like, and I think this is prayer, like I think this, like getting to the end of yourself and getting really honest about what you need and who you are before a higher power that is benevolent and good, This is prayer, isn't it? Is it Anne Lamott says there's only really 3 words you need to pray, and it's sorry, please. No, is it sorry, help, and thank you? Something like that. And she's right, Yeah. So that began that journey, and I did a version of the 12 steps. It was a little bit, chaotic, but it began actually the place where I was telling the truth. And it also was a place where I actually started to remember things for the first time. Like I have a bunch of sexual abuse in my history, and my sister disclosed it, and it was a lot. And I began basically facing the truth of these deep rooted things that were causing so much pain internally, and got some help from a counselor for the first time. So, it's so funny because often people will say, like, I've been a brothel chaplain. I've gone into like the streets and help trafficking victims. Like I'm pretty bold and fearless when it comes to like helping people. It's not even that scary to me.
Yeah.
But going to my first counseling appointment, I had to use a paper bag. So, it's
Isn't
such
that
a funny
crazy?
thing that like, yeah, so externally I'm fearless, internally I'm so afraid. And that was one of the things that I uncovered. Then I moved locations, and then I got a sponsor who was like a hardcore, sort of old hardcore 12-stepper, which, cheers. I think I'm up for whatever works. And it actually was very helpful for me because it forced me to do things and do work that I wouldn't have normally done. It's not where I ended. I don't subscribe to her version of things, but it was very helpful to me at the time. And I remember when we did a really thorough, moral inventory where we actually looked at not just the presenting things, but the things behind the things, what those character defects were, those motives behind. And it was pretty dominated by fear. And it was surprising because we look at my personality and you would know me, fear wouldn't even come up. You wouldn't even be like, oh, you know what she is? She's afraid. It wouldn't even come up. But all over that, at the bottom of all those things was fear.
Yeah.
And I realized how fear as a motivator is simply just oppression. And getting out of personal fear is probably, one of the great delights of a true recovery.
Yeah. It's interesting because I had a similar experience with a pretty rough sponsor to start. And I needed that at that time. That is exactly what I needed then. It's not what I have now. And I haven't had that in a long time. But coming out of the gate, that's definitely what I needed. And she was really hardcore about certain things, but also gentle about other things. And the thing she was gentle about was the spirituality component, the third step and whatnot, and step 2 and 3, where you really have to start wrestling with, do I even believe in God? Like, what's my deal? And she just said, it's whatever, like, are you God? And I was like, no. And she's like, that's a good start. That's where we'll start.
That's the most important point, actually.
Yeah. You're not it. And there's something else. And I was like, well, I can tell you it's not a man. I can also tell you that it's not somebody keeping score of, because I still have a lot of that, but I had a lot of unbridled angst. So tired of men telling me what to do and this and that, and the church and the way women were viewed, the way women were spoken about, the way women were treated. It wasn't right. And I watched other women in my family be subjected to that and call it faith or obedience or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, no, thank you. And so I'm like, I'm not going to pray to a man. And she was like, okay, And so I needed that. It's almost like in that book, The Shack, or even the movie, The Shack, right? Where God shows up to that guy in a way that he can handle, because he had a difficult relationship with his earthly father. So God needed to show up in a way, right? And over years of healing and trying to understand that. And ultimately for me, it was like, God is not those people. You've got to learn how to untangle that stuff, right? Because my mind had just filed it all away as yuck. And because it represented so much oppression and being bullies and being mean to people and all this kind of stuff, because I had seen it. And
that's why watching the story of Jesus for you is so profound, and would be for everyone. I highly recommend watching The Chosen, but because reminding ourselves of, because those same people that have conflated God with control and oppression and power and fear and shame and self-loathing are the same people who did that to Jesus too, and who ultimately were part of crucifying him. Like, they will kill any element that is a threat to their own power and control. So, but I think discerning that is hard, because especially when you're a little kid and you're brought up going like, these people represent God. And so you're like, well, they represent God. But, even I'm glad, your sharp mind at 7 going, this doesn't seem to be like a thing that works. So I think it's also then learning, instead of suppressing our own voice and numbing our own pain, which is that addiction journey, is actually letting it speak. And what is it saying? And getting compassionately curious about what is actually going on. And when you begin to do that, you start then to free God from these human controlling political religious constructs that keep trying to harm people. Jesus had some pretty harsh words for them then, and I think he's got some pretty harsh words for them now. And I think that's beautiful, and I even love the notion, and I know a lot of Christians have issues with people, just using the word higher power, but I love it. I think that is the character of God, to reveal God's self to people as they're ready. There's nothing pushy. Jesus is always invitational and never like pushy to people who are broken and excluded and oppressed. So I feel like that invitational, like if you could believe that there is a higher power, great, come closer.
Yeah.
If you could believe that higher power is for you, not against you, great, keep coming. If you could believe that higher power is filled with love and forgiveness and hope and truth, good, keep coming. If you could believe, and then then eventually I think you're like, oh, I see, this higher power is a person who loves me, who's, so I feel like it's a beautiful journey. And I there's many people in the recovery rooms I know that have made that journey.
Yes.
From literally like, I will reluctantly believe that there's a higher power because that's what I have to do to get sober, to like, oh, there's a higher power. And to access that power is to be transformed. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think it's so different for every person, which is why these types of conversations are important, right? Because because you step on a path doesn't mean you stay on that path, right? We're going to just keep on, hopefully, evolving, asking more questions, staying curious. More will be revealed over time. And I think that, understanding, when I was sitting, you said it earlier, a couple of things that really struck me. But one was when you were sitting in there in those meetings and you're like, this is what church, I had those feelings of like, this is what I was always looking for. This is what I was hoping I would find in church, in a church community, is this type of love, this type of openness and acceptance and forgiveness. Instead of, and when you're honest, you get ostracized, right? Like that's the opposite of it, but that's what I found in my church. That's what I found in a lot of churches.
Yeah, it's tragic. It's tragic.
Yeah, it's so sad because there's such an opportunity there for us to all help each other heal. And the other thing that you talked about was how you were so tough. And when we're really, really scared, usually at a young age, we start putting on this, we learn how to appear bulletproof, right? Like that's part of, and when I needed help, I didn't ask for it because people thought I was strong and self-reliant. And my ego at that point couldn't, and it almost killed me. And so, but when you were talking about that, it's like you had intellectualized your feelings. I thought I had been feeling all that time. I thought I was feeling stuff because I was thinking about it, and it's not the same. And I didn't know that until I started actually feeling my feelings. I was like, oh shit, this is way harder, So I think,
and there's a couple things you mentioned that I've had some help with. So the woman in recovery piece, I think that matters. There's a book called Quit Like a Woman by Holly Whitaker. It's a little critiquey of the 12-step system, but mostly around the male centeredness of the program. And that was super helpful to me because basically, like some of the points of that book, one is just the systemic nature of the alcohol industry that's uncritiqued is one of her points, which I think is really important. Like there is this thing that is a conspiracy to sell more alcohol that is poison to people, and that we just keep going like, oh, just certain people have problems with this. It's like, no, actually, this is a bad thing. So that's kind of a refreshing. And then also she makes a point on how the entire alcohol industry targets women specifically in these days, which is also interesting. Yeah. And then the other thing she said is, when you're talking about power and accessing power is kind of a continuum. So on the one end of power, you have people with a lot of it. So when you have white male, fairly well-off men who are the founders of AA, in order for them to access the higher power, they have to give up their power. So there's a real sense in which, and that's where there's that ethos in the 12, which I love, is to like let go of your ego, which is kind of your false self. And then you can access this power that's greater than you. So for them on that side of the continuum, they have to give it up. But she said in her experience, and this is what really resonated with me, I think in my own life, but also with the women that I journeyed with, is they're on the other continuum of power. So they have none. They have zero. As a matter of fact, like everything is questioned. Like everything is gone. There's no agency. There's no, and for them to access power on that side of the continuum means they have to find it. There is no, and I remember talking to a woman saying like, I've got nothing. Like when you tell I've got to get to the bottom, she's like, is there another bottom? Like, I feel like I've been at the bottom of the world for my whole entire life. All I have is the bottom. So her struggle is not ego. Her struggle is like a lack of it. Her struggle is a lack of is full insecurity and oppression. So she's got to actually access power, which is going to sound to people that have power like ego, but it's actually not. It's just a healthy sense of self. And I could feel that. I felt that tension in those places where there wasn't really a critique of like how we access. So again, you can see this in the life of Jesus very well. When he talks to people with power and wealth and money, he'll say, you got to give that up to get to me. And we'll be like, oh, wow, but then when he talks to people without it, he says, here, you can have it. Take this. And he'll even be like, here, take it. It's yours. And now you can use it, so it's a totally different approach, but accessing the same thing. So I think there's that conversation about how we access power is really important and where we are in the journey of that. And that was really, really helpful to me when it comes to true transformation.
Yeah.
And that was really good. And then the other resource that's been really, really helpful to me is the internal family systems therapy. And there's 2 books there that have been helpful. One is the founder, Richard Schwartz. He wrote a book called No Bad Parts, which kind of explains the whole thing. And then Jenna Rice-Mara, she's a friend who's a therapist, and she's done sort of a Christian framework of IFS. So to help, because she mostly counsels Christians who are trapped not only in their addictions, but now they're trapped in projecting something that's actually not true. So it's kind of a double. You're trapped twice. So it makes your pain even more. And so she uses this and she explains it in a book called Altogether You, which I just found so transformational. And using this compassionate curiosity over judgment, it really is this invitation to get curious about what actually is happening and what's going on. And she would say, or they would say together, which has been transformative to me, is that there's a part of you that to protect the injury or the pain, there's parts of you that rise up to the occasion. One is a manager, which would kind of speak to some of your spoken things around, I've got to control everything. I've got to do everything perfect. I've got to make sure this pain doesn't happen again. And then the other one is a firefighter. And the firefighter is just like, I can get rid of this pain. Yep. And they're often at odds with each other, but they're parts of you that are actually just trying to protect the part of you that's injured or painful. And so I think in many ways, I just vilified my addiction. And I do want to say actual heroin, that the things that are killing people are an evil construct to destroy. There's no question in my mind. But the part of me that's trying to put the pain out, that part needs to be helped. That part isn't inherently evil. So I think that was a super helpful healing journey for me too, to stop vilifying the part of me that was using addiction as a numbing agency. So a couple of those resources really helped widen, I think, my understanding of recovery and then move towards it.